try video for a bit, keep freezing up, so I might have to cut the video off. Anything kind of on the go, so I sort of started thinking, Lord, what's going on? We've been speaking, and yeah, that just sort of kept coming back. That the idea of loving thy neighbor, and what that really means. In my life, and I trust that what I'm experiencing, maybe that others are as well. Usually that's the case, and I'm not alone in these things. So a few things I'd like to look at this morning, but just a little preface, sort of how I came to this this thought about loving thy neighbor. It's one of those things that it seems pretty straightforward. Oftentimes it doesn't seem like a big deal and sort of something we've got down pat, but until the Lord sort of puts his finger on it and maybe shows us that we still have some work to do in that area. And it seems to be one of those things in my life that, again, you think it's not a big deal, you kind of have it figured out, but yet it's something that constantly needs to be worked on in my life, that I have to pay attention to and focus on. So we're going to look at a few things. So just in preface this morning, sort of where I came from putting this message together was a situation I was at work. Things are changing a little bit for me at work. I've spent the last year working on my own by myself. And this last week I had a partner. I had somebody I had to work with. And very close quarters we were working in, really not a lot of, it's a small shop area. And this man I know well. We've worked together for quite a while. We get along fairly well, and he's going through a lot of really hard things in his life right now. A lot of personal things, a lot of emotional things, and he really just started opening up to me this week when we were working together. And that was fine. I just listened and gave him some advice where I could. And as the week went on, Monday it was good, it was fine, and Tuesday was okay, and Wednesday starting to get a little, I'd heard enough. I was ready to move on and talk about something else or do some, felt like it was distracting from work. And just as the week went on, I kind of started losing patience and really didn't want to hear it anymore. And I figured I got my own problems, guy, like, you don't need to hear all yours constantly. And the Lord just started to speak to me that, what, this man had a need. This man had a need. And obviously at that point in time, I was what he needed in his life. He needed somebody to talk to, and the Lord really just started speaking that what I could do, in the thought of loving thy neighbor, what I could do for this man to help him out, and my part to play in that. So just considering those thoughts and loving thy neighbor, maybe we'll move on to those verses in Matthew, and I'll read those out for us. And that's Matthew chapter 22. And verses 35 through 40. And it says, "Then one of them, a lawyer, asked him a question, testing him, saying, 'Teacher, which is the greatest commandment in the law?' Verse 37, Jesus said to him, 'You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your mind. This is the first and great commandment, and the second is like it. You shall love your neighbor as yourself. On these two commandments hang all the law and the prophets.'" Now we all know that verse. We know it well. And again, like I said, it's one of those things that we've sort of been a part of our lives, and I'm sure we've given it some thought, but yet it still seems to be one of those things that continually just comes up, over and over again. And the thought is, why should we love our neighbor as ourselves? Why is that so important? Why is that as it says here, the second greatest commandment? Past the love the Lord your God with all your heart. The next is, love your neighbor as yourself. Again, just considering this, it seems like one of those subjects that maybe would be covered in Sunday school, right? Like a child's lesson. Simple point, pretty easy, right? But it's so simple, but it still yet challenges me to this day to love my neighbor and what that truly means. It's actually quite a deep subject. So interesting, as I was studying and considering it this week, I came across quite a compelling sort of thought that somebody else had that I read. I think it was online that I read it. So I just want to share that with you concerning love and this thought of the love of the Lord and the love that we have to have for others. You know, it was suggested by this person that, you know, we are to love the Lord our God. Now, that relationship that we have with God and that love is sort of based on the fact that we did nothing to deserve it. You know, he freely offers and we accept. And there is actually some self-interest in this love. You know, how can we not learn to love the Lord when we realize what he has done for us? You know, he first loved us. He provided a way for salvation through Jesus. And, you know, when our eyes are open to that, what he did for us, you know, how can we not love him for that completely undeserved love that he offers? Now, God's love for us is different from that. It's a divine love. You know, this love that God has for us is based on what we've done for him or what we've provided for him. You know, it's a different divine love. Now, considering that, you know, how do we apply that to our own lives and to this message of love thy neighbor? You know, it's two completely different loves. And truly, I think what God is trying to teach us through this love thy neighbor is that divine love that he has for us. You know, he wants us to, I'm not sure when I jumped out there, but just the thought that God wants us to love our neighbors with that divine love, you know, that love that isn't, you know, based on how they treat us or how others treat us. You know, we need to learn to love not based on what others do for us. Even when they are undeserving, we still need to learn to love our neighbors. So I'd like to look at, just move on and look at, we all know the parable of the Good Samaritan, and this all ties in. So I'm going to go ahead and read that scripture, so just bear with me. There's some length here, and then we're going to move on and just sort of pull some thoughts and ideas and some points out of that message. So that we're looking at Luke chapter 10 and verse 25. The parable of the Good Samaritan is what we're leading towards here. And it says in verse 25, and behold, a certain lawyer stood up and tested him, saying, Teacher, what shall I do to inherit eternal life? He said to him, What is written in the law? What are you reading of it? So he answered and said, You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your strength, and with all your mind, and your neighbor as yourself. And he said to him, You have answered rightly. Do this, and you will live. But he, wanting to justify himself, and this is speaking of the lawyer, said to Jesus, Who is my neighbor? And here we see Jesus' response. Jesus immediately goes into the parable of the Good Samaritan. In verse 30, Jesus answers and said, A certain man went down from Jerusalem to Jericho and fell among thieves who stripped him of his clothing, wounded him, and departed, leaving him half dead. Now by chance a certain priest came down the road, and when he saw him, he passed to the other side. Likewise, the Levite, when he arrived at the place, came and looked and passed by the other side. But a certain Samaritan, as he journeyed, came where he was, and when he saw him, he had compassion. So he went to him, bandaged his wounds, pouring on oil and wine, and set him on his own animal, and brought him to an inn, and took care of him. On the next day, when he departed, he took out 2 denarii and gave them to the innkeeper, and said to him, Take care of him, and whatever more you spend, I will come again and repay you. So which of these 3 you think was a neighbor to him who fell? And this is the answer. This is the response, right, to the question. And his answer was, He who showed mercy on him. And Jesus said to him, Go and do likewise. Now, the wonderful thing, you know, we see here about Jesus' teaching in these parables is that he is able to portray so many different messages within this simple story, right? He could have easily answered the man with a straightforward, you know, everybody's your neighbor, or treat everyone as if they were your neighbor. But he didn't. He launched straight into the parable of the Good Samaritan. You know, and also just considering it, and we know this, Jesus could have used any different examples, or even instead of a Samaritan, he could have used a Gentile, but he purposely chose to use the Samaritan as an example. You know, I just want to touch on a couple points on that before we move on, but Jesus makes the point in this parable of showing that others saw the injured man but kept walking. You know, there could be a whole other message within that point. But first it says the priest came, he crossed to the other side, but then the Levite came and he actually looked, and then he also crossed the other side. The point being that neither of these men attempted to do anything. You know, they saw the need, but they chose not to be bothered. And then comes the Samaritan. Now, the Samaritan, just to have an understanding, I think we all have an idea and have heard this before, but I'll just dig in and give us a little history about what it is to be a Samaritan and what that means to the Jewish people. So Samaritans, in 721 BC, the northern kingdom of Israel fell to the Assyrians. And, you know, we know that many were led back to Assyria as captives, but some actually remained and were intermarried with foreigners that were actually placed there by the Assyrians. And these group of people that would have been half Jewish, half Gentile became known as Samaritans. Now, the Samaritans were really disliked by the Jewish people because they were considered mixed. They had mixed themselves with Gentiles. They had also rejected a lot of the Jewish traditions, and they had a different place of worship. They centered their beliefs still on, you know, on the books written by Moses, but rejected the writings of the prophets. You know, it's been suggested that Jewish people sort of disliked the Samaritans or hated them more than even just, you know, being a Gentile, because it was based on mixture and being mixed and denying that true religion. So just to put it into perspective, you know, the example that Jesus used was just not a non-believer. It would have been very controversial at the time that he was using this example of the Samaritan. So keeping that in mind as we go through this. You know, also in the parable, by using the Samaritan, I was considering this, Jesus is not only showing the difference between those that, or he is rather showing the difference between those that know the law and those who actually live it out and walk it out as part of their daily lifestyle and conduct. I mean, obviously the Jewish people were very up on the law, but we know this all throughout the Bible. We see that over and over again. Jesus' teaching was directed at those who knew the law. But just as I was saying, Jesus knew, or much of Jesus' teaching was directed at those who knew the law and knew the scripture, but really weren't walking it out. They were caught up in the letter of the law and not fully understanding it. So I just want to switch gears a little bit and turn the message on ourselves here. You know, when I was considering this and reading these verses, you can easily skim over them and think, well, obviously I would never be the one who crosses over to the other side and keeps walking, you know. So how can we walk this out? It seems, again, like a very simple message. Love thy neighbor. It's easy, right? I have said this before in different sermons. You know, we have great neighbors. We have amazing neighbors that live next to us. They're great people. You know, no trouble there loving them. You know, except for maybe the guy down the road a little bit. He's kind of old and grumpy, and I don't talk to him much. And I'm pausing for I can't see anybody, but that was a pause for effect. You know, it's easy to love and help out those neighbors that we like, or the people that we like, or the people that are like us. But the point here is the other people, maybe people that, you know. So how can we walk this out? It seems, again, like a very simple message. Love thy neighbor. It's easy, right? I have said this before in different sermons. You know, we have great neighbors. We have amazing neighbors that live next to us. They're great people. You know, no trouble there loving them. You know, except for maybe the guy down the road a little bit. He's kind of old and grumpy, and I don't talk to him much. And I'm pausing for I can't see anybody, but that was a pause for effect. You know, it's easy to love and help out those neighbors that we like, or the people that we like, or the people that are like us. But the point here is the other people, maybe people that, so the neighbors that we get along with are easy, right? They're easy to love. It's the grumpy ones that we don't seem to get along with, the hard ones to show that love to. Only to love those that have provided us with something, or those that we have good relationship. We're to walk out that love for those that are undeserving as well, those who may not even love us back. We still show that love to our neighbors. You know, just considering that thought, that as Christians, we tend to be very good at offering charity to those that are like-minded. You know, Christians helping other Christians is something we really seem to have down pat. And there's certainly nothing wrong with that. And I'm not saying that Christians shouldn't help other Christians. There is a danger in becoming one those, the priest, the Levite, that crosses to the side and choosing to ignore things when they become maybe too messy or maybe just outside of our normal comfort zone. You know, it's acting in all areas, looking to help out all those neighbors. You know, I was thinking too, and considering this, and to be clear, I'm pointing out my own shortcomings here, not others. This is stuff that I deal with, so please keep that in mind as I say it. But as Christians, we're also very good at praying for the needs of others. And you know what? Prayer is amazing. Prayer is necessary, and sometimes prayer is all we can even do. However, God has spoken to me at times too. In certain situations, he has given us the ability to multitask. You know, I can pray and I can also act at the same time. It's funny when I think about this parable, and when I've read it before, I sometimes think, and this is me projecting it on in my own mind, that, you know, I bet at least probably the priest and the Levite might have shot up a quick prayer about the injured man, maybe, right? At least when they crossed the road, maybe they shot up a quick prayer. But, you know, just that thought sometimes that we can sometimes use that excuse not to get involved is, yes, we're still going to do something, and we're going to pray, but when the time comes to act, we need to listen to the Lord, and when he leads us to step out, we need to make sure that we step out and in prayer and in action. So just to finish that point up with a funny little story, a personal story. Years ago, my friend Mike, when he still lived in Ontario, his wife and my mom were driving his old Volkswagen through Wellbridge Loyalist, north of Belleville, and the car broke down. And I happened to be in the area. I was probably coming home from work or something, and they must have called me, or I passed them by, so I stopped. And I got there, and the car was stopped working, side of the road, and I popped and his car leaked oil really bad, and there was actually a small engine fire going on. And my dear mother did all that she knew how to do in the situation. She suggested that we all gather around the car and pray about the situation. And, you know, again, she did what she knew what to do. And I just turned to her and I suggested back that maybe she go ahead and pray, but I was just going to take a minute and put the fire out first. You know, and that's not anything negative in any way. It's just a funny comment on that. You know, there's a time to act, and there's a time to submit those things. And, you know, I think we covered that situation well with her praying and me putting the fire out, and we all got it out of there. So kind of the point of that whole thing is that when it comes down to it, we must be willing to step out in action and in practical ways when the Lord requires us to. You know, sometimes we need to just pray for our neighbors. Jump right away. We need to just know when to step out and when the Lord has something for us to do practically. So the next point I'd like to just look at is that there's a cost involved in loving our neighbor. If we go back to the parable, I've got 4 quick bullet points I pulled from the Samaritan and how he behaved to help us be good neighbors. And just how there is going to be a cost involved to us when we step out in that area. So the first one was the Samaritan was observant. He saw a need. You know, we must live a life where we're not just focused on our own needs. We must be aware of what's going on around us. We must be observant, looking for those needs. The second one is the Samaritan showed compassion. He saw the need and he went. I think it has time. You know, that time that he took, time is very, very precious to me. And, you know, I think there's different areas where we could have seen a need or even want to step out, but our busy, fast-paced lives, we just don't seem to have the time. Or maybe we just don't see the need because we're too busy with other things. You know, the message here is that there can be a cost. It can cost us something. Loving our neighbors can cost us our time, our resource to make a difference. The opportunities, and you just have to step out when they come. For me, personally, this is just stepping out when someone has a need or someone asks for help. Even sometimes it's a social invitation. You know, I'm not an overly social person myself, but sometimes, yeah, no, you have to go. You need to go. There's an opportunity there to meet with neighbors or your friends or maybe those acquaintances you don't know that well. It's listening to the Lord and knowing when those opportunities come, that you take that. It was the idea of just taking that opportunity. You know, the point being that we need to just step out when those opportunities are given to us. You know, we want to make sure that we're being observant, you know, and when they come, that we have that compassion and then take action like the Good Samaritan did, you know, and just realizing that there may be a cost to us, be that good neighbor. So, you know, just thinking that, Lord, help me be a better neighbor, you know, or help to understand what it means to be my neighbor.